What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down the evolution of the wide receiver position. So we're going to kind of be comparing and contrasting some older school wide receiver methods to some newer school wide receiver methods that I feel work better with today's style of play at this position. So the first example we're going to be taking a look at here is this wide receiver who's going to be running a slant route versus a DB who's inside shade press, and he is going to be on the goal line. So it's a little bit different than maybe what you might think of how this route would work. So if we have a DB who's lined up inside shade, obviously his goal primarily is to not let us get to the inside, right? He doesn't want us to run a slant, a 5-yard in, a dig, a post, force everything to the outside where he has help, which is AKA the sideline. So how you would run a normal slant versus this type of look would be something called the diamond release. And that's kind of something that's been like true and true older school, newer school wide receivers, which is essentially where you would take 3 hard steps at this DB's outside shoulder and outside hip. And the goal would be to get him to flip his hips open to the fade, and then we would cut back underneath him. But we have a problem. We are on the 5-yard line. So that release necessarily wouldn't work. What you have to make it look more like is an actual goal line fade. So you need to make it look like exactly how you would run a goal line fade. Nobody runs a goal line fade, especially kicked out wide, probably on the bottom of the numbers or maybe even the middle of the numbers, by just running hard to the outside. This DB is not exactly threatened by your speed. He's more so threatened, I would say, by your release and your release tempo. So let's watch what this wide receiver does. So he attacks his DB's leverage, does a little hezzy move, then he goes into the diamond release. And that is how you ultimately want to run a slant versus this look. This is kind of like a newer school type release, if you will. So how would you, a lot of guys, when they run this goal line fade, there are multiple ways you could do this. You could maybe come off the ball and do just like a simple slide to the outside. You plant with your inside foot, you jab to the inside, you slide, you kind of slow down the tempo, and then you accelerate to that back pylon, right? Now, what this receiver does is probably exactly what he does on a fade. He gives this little like crossover move where he just steps 1, 2, which threatens this DB's leverage, makes him think that he's probably going to the outside, gets him to protect his leverage and hold to the inside. Then he comes off the ball and does this little like kind of skip release, right? That little double step with his inside foot. Anytime you're trying to work a skip almost, it's like 2 steps with the foot. And that slows down the tempo. That makes this DB think like, okay, he's trying to slow play me. Maybe he goes back to the inside and then he accelerates up and he angles his body towards that back pylon. That's what gets that DB to think, oh crap, I'm beat on the goal line fade. Then we put the brakes on, and then obviously we got that DB to open up his hips and we could run on this slant. You don't want to be that dude, obviously, that forces the release to the inside. You don't want to just give a quick jab and then go, as that DB is going to get hands on us. We have to threaten him to that back pylon. And this is a very, very simple release that you could do. So he almost adds like 3 releases to this. Now, you have to be careful that you don't waste a ton of time. If he would have just crossed over with his left foot and done that skip, and then bursted, that would have been totally fine as well. But you have to make it look exactly like how you would run a goal line fade, not necessarily an open field fade. So he comes off the ball again. I'm going to play at full speed, and then we'll get to the rest of these examples. We're going to be talking about catching, and then we're also going to be talking top of the route. So comes off, crossover, skip, bursts up to the outside to get that DB to flip, and then he's able to win on the slant with plenty of spacing. You just have to be careful, guys, that we don't waste a ton of time with this. Make it look exactly like how you would run that goal line fade. Now, before we get into the rest of these examples, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you would like a daily training schedule that you could follow in the gym and on the field, go to that very first link in the description below where you could get our elite wide receiver training package. It is 2 full months of wide receiver workouts mapped out into a schedule for you. Like Monday you're doing this, Tuesday you're doing that, etc. We include rest days, speed and agility days, everything that you need to become an elite wide receiver and improve your skills. We give you the exact sets and reps to follow on each drill, and then we give you a video example of how each drill should look so you know how to perform it. So guys, if you would like a daily training schedule, excuse me, to improve your skills, to get you faster, to get you bigger, to get you stronger, and make you a better player on the field, go to that very first link in the description below. We'd love to get you on our elite wide receiver training package. Let's get back to this film. Now, the next thing we're going to be talking about is a deep over-the-shoulder pass. So I'm going to play this full speed, and this is a perfect example of a wide receiver using a concept that's kind of like, I would say, newer age, which is late hands, which is essentially showing your hands at the last possible second. So a DB has no idea where the ball is, no idea where to play the ball, and it's just honestly a more consistent way to catch a deep pass. So a lot of times, older school wide receiver coaches are always talking about high pointing the ball when it's downfield. And I'm not saying that that's bad advice always. If that pass is underthrown, Like, you have to come back to it. Hell yeah, go up and get that ball at the highest point, because you want to beat the DB. You're probably going to have to fight through the DB, and it's a jump ball situation. So yes, go up with early hands, go up with strong hands, and go make that play. But if that ball keeps you in stride, a lot of times older school wide receiver coaches would teach that you want to show your hands like early. You want to raise your hands, catch the ball like eye level. We don't want to do that. One, because when you start to show your hands early, automatically, you're not pumping your arms. So you're going to slow down. So if you have a DB who's beat, he may have a chance to recover, but also what happens when you slow down is if that ball is leading you perfectly and maybe you misjudge it, you won't be able to catch up to it. So you want to keep your arms pumping until the last possible second. And when a DB is running stride for stride with you, we want him to do this. We want him to have to look for the ball. We want him to have no idea where the football actually is, and that comes from having laid hands. But when you show your hands early and that DB sees that, he's no longer going to be looking for the ball. He's playing us. He's playing my hands. So he could shoot his hand right through the middle of my hands and get that pass breakup. So when you show your hands late on an over-the-shoulder pass, it helps you catch up to one that maybe is thrown out in front of you, but also it lets this it's just a better way to catch a deep ball so this DB doesn't have a chance to react. So newer school wide receivers are more comfortable with that late hands method. That's something that you should always be practicing. Anytime that you're with a quarterback, anytime that you guys are working deep passes downfield like a deep corner, a deep post, DB's right on your hip, let's be late with my hands so he has no idea where to play that ball. Now, this next example is going to be a whip route that this wide receiver runs. So a whip route is where, like, you come off the ball, you sell like you're going to be running just a simple quick slant like we talked about earlier in this example, and then you whip back out towards the sideline, right? So a kind of an older school way to get in and out of a whip route would be by taking 3 steps rather than 2 steps. So a 2-step whip route is very, very tough to guard, but it's kind of like a newer school, I guess you could say, method of getting in and out of your breaks. And again, this position constantly evolves. It's just like anything, right? Like, everybody loves to talk about the evolution of the quarterback position. Like, you see a lot of older school guys, they have that more traditional over-the-top release, and now you look at guys like Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, even Tom Brady was talking about it a little while ago, about how they change up their arm angle and they're throwing more sidearm to throw a round player. It evolves, right? Just like this receiver position with more efficient ways to get in and out of your breaks. So this receiver, like I said, is running a whip route. Now, normally what they would teach, I'm going to play at full speed and we'll break it down. Normally it's a 3-step break. That's what kind of older school guys would teach. You would come off of this outside foot. You would take your first step to the whip, second step, third step right there, and then you would take an additional step and you would snap down or start the break, in this case on this receiver's right foot. So you would snap down, then the next step out of this break you would start to pivot, and then your third step you would hook back around to get your hips parallel to the line of scrimmage, and then you would drive off of that outside foot to get out. But I feel a better way, and I feel as the position evolves, you see guys that run great whip routes in the NFL, like one that comes to mind would be like a Julian Edelman type wide receiver, or maybe like Hunter Renfrow. Everybody sees those clips pop up where they start the break actually on their third step, right? So they come off the ball, they break off of their outside foot, they go 1, 2, 3, and that's their snap down foot. Now, this just gets you out in 1 step faster. Again, if you can get in and out of your breaks and you can eliminate. Now, I want to be very clear that it's not always about steps. A lot of times wide receivers focus so much on their steps and eliminating extra steps that into the break they will start to slow down just to get that specific step number. We don't want to do that, because especially if I'm running a double move, I'm trying to get this DB to crash on a slant, make him think it's a drag, a 5-yard in, whatever route that you're trying to sell. So if you start to slow down, that just tells the DB like, hey, expect a break, and he's no longer biting on the slant. He doesn't believe it, right? So a lot of guys will do that because they're so focused on steps. Honestly, I'd rather have you go fast, attempt a break on your inside foot, and take 4 steps, but you're dropping violently, than slow down just to make sure that you get 2. This is kind of a little bit more advanced. You still got to make sure that you have speed into the break. But on that third step, you have to be violent. You have to drop your hips aggressively. I tell my receivers to pretend that there is a string attached to their chin. Somebody grabbed that string with their hand and they are pulling it straight down, straight to their knee, right? So when you hit that third step, that's the break that we want. 1, 2, 3, and you start to snap down. Now, this is where it gets more efficient. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your outside foot and you are going to hook it around. And the goal is to get your toes perpendicular to the line of scrimmage. Everybody knows what like perpendicular means, like obviously in math, or at least just think of it like this. You want your toes facing the line of scrimmage with the outside foot. So he snaps down on his inside foot, hooks the foot back around, toes are pointed towards the line of scrimmage. That gives you like almost almost a 45-degree angle with your shin, which isn't necessarily bad as long as your, like, I guess, ankle isn't pointed towards the ground, because that can put a lot of stress on your knee. That's why ankle stability, like doing a lot of single leg exercises as a receiver, is super important, because your cuts are going to be a little bit more efficient and safer. But when he hooks this foot around, guess what he could do? He could just push off of this foot, and we eliminate that extra step. And if you still sell the break, now you're in and out of it little amount of steps possible, or least amount of steps possible. It's faster, and you still and separate the exact same way. So that is a textbook whip route. So guys, on your whip route, you should challenge yourself. Don't do it in 3 steps. Let's try to get it in 2 steps. And off of that 3rd step, just like how you run a slant and go, just like how you run a post corner where you're cutting off of 1 foot, you just hook the outside foot back around.